Your Excellencies, members of the ifimes Council, members of ifimes, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Allow me to welcome you on behalf of International Institute for Middle East and Balkan Studies, ifimes from Ljubljana, the organizer of today's lecture of Mr. Albin Kurti with the title Kosovo at the Crossroads. Albin Kurti is the deputy of the self-determination movement Levizia Vetendosje at the Assembly of the Republic of Kosovo. Until recently, he was the leader of that movement and chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee at the Kosovo Parliament. He was also a political prisoner and students' leader. In his lecture, Kurti will talk about current events in Kosovo, its challenges and international relations, as well as its future. The lecture will be delivered in English language and will be followed by a discussion with the guest lecturer, which will be moderated by Bakhtiar Alaf and myself. In his lecture, our guest will present his view on Kosovo role in contemporary international relations, the situations in Kosovo, and the Kosovo-Serbian dialogue. And now I give the floor to Mr. Kurti.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I want to thank first of all the ifimes Institute for the opportunity to speak today and discuss together something which is very important, I believe, not only for Kosovo, but for the region and Europe as a whole. 8 years after the Declaration of Independence and 17 years after the liberation of our country, Kosovo is at the crossroads. Now, this is bad because we should have been on the right way with economic development, social justice, and sovereign state. But on the other hand, this is also good because we did push the brakes on the wrong way in which we were, and now we see a crossroads in front of us. Our people in our country used to be in crisis for many years, but now for a few months the government is in crisis too. There is tear gas against the people in the square outside the parliament, and there is tear gas against the government in the plenary sessions inside the parliament. Nothing less than the future of our republic is at stake. When I say that we are in front of a crossroads, I do not mean that we have some dilemma which way to turn, but there are different interests and different powers wanting to take different paths. And the result is still unknown if you judge by current events there. The wrong way in which we're trying to leave behind is the unprincipled and asymmetric dialogue with Serbia. A 5-year-old dialogue without any conditions for Serbia and for internal issues of Kosovo. Finally, this dialogue is bringing about the inevitable. A territorial autonomous entity called the Association or Community of Serb-Majority Municipalities. What Serbia achieved fast during the war in Bosnia, namely Republika Srpska, now is trying to achieve rather slowly in peacetime in Kosovo, namely Zajednica. The association of 14 municipalities of the Serbs in Bosnia, with the help and the plan of Belgrade, Serbs there formed on 26th of April 1991. On 9th of January 1992, they declared independence, while on 28th of February 1992, they approved their constitution. Internationally, this has been recognized on 14th of December 1995 with Dayton Accord, after negotiations where Milosevic recognized Bosnia outside Serbia, once Izetbegovic recognized Serbia inside Bosnia. Just like Republika Srpska is a term that cannot be translated, you cannot say Serbian Republic, it's Republika Srpska. Likewise, Zajednica is becoming such a term. Even in English language in Brussels, they use the ZSO acronym, Zajednica Srpske Opština, and the coalition agreement in Kosovo between PDK, LDK, and Srpska has been signed only in Serbian language, where it says Zajednica. Association of municipalities is not translated into udruženje, but into Zajednica. Definitely, it's a para-state entity which would like our weak state to render dysfunctional. Let me mention some of the fundamental problems with agreement of 25th of August 2015, which established Zajednica, agreement signed by both prime ministers, Isa Mustafa for Kosovo and Aleksandar Vučić for Serbia. Point 2 of this agreement avoids the Assembly of Kosovo altogether and states that Zajednica will be a legal entity with a distinct character. Point 3 of this agreement shows that the Assembly of Zajednica approves the statute, not State of Kosovo, the Republic of Kosovo. Zajednica will have its own legal order. The agreement of April 19th, 2013, the agreement of August 25th, 2015, and the statutes. Point 4 shows that Zajednica will have powers of an administrative character, which in the legal aspect means executive. Full overview on economy, education, healthcare, social care, urban and rural planning. Furthermore, this association represents its members, its municipalities, towards Pristina and establishes international relations with municipality associations throughout the world, having the powers of foreign policy. Thus, Zajednica appears as an independent level of self-government. One can easily imagine that this association of Serb-majority municipalities will establish international relations with association of Serb-majority municipalities, Serb municipalities in Serbia, in Belarus, in Russia, and so on. Point 5 states that the central authorities can delegate additional powers to Zajednica. The Constitution of Kosovo and the law on local self-government do not allow this. Point 6 shows that the Assembly of Zajednica can amend the statute. That Zajednica will have a president, a vice president, the council with 30 members, and the executive board with 7 members, its own administration with its own chief of administration and the headquarters of Zajednica. The appeals office of Zajednica is also an expression of the autonomy of Zajednica. Point 8 equalizes Zajednica with the central authorities. Thus, the government of Kosovo, by seeking their cooperation and exchange of information between them. Point 9 states that Zajednica will promote the interests of the Serb community. Full stop. If you are an Albanian in a Serb majority municipality, Zajednica is not going to represent you. So we're going to get two kinds of Albanians in Kosovo. Albanians who are in Kosovo, outside Zajednica, and Albanians who are in Zajednica and remain somehow outside Kosovo as minority in Zajednica, and who will not be represented by Zajednica. Point 10 states that Zajednica can propose amendments to legislation and different regulations of our country. Thus, it becomes an authority of the source of law by becoming equal to the Assembly and the government of Kosovo. Point 11 states that Zajednica can address all the levels of courts in the Republic of Kosovo. Point 13 shows that the 4 municipalities in the north of River Iber are the core of Zajednica with their police commander who must be a Serb. So being a Serb turns into a profession. It's as if it's ethical category, not ethnic identity. Point 17 states that Serbia is obliged to fund Zajednica and it will be exempt from taxes. Point 19 states that Zajednica can dissolve itself by 2/3. President of our country can dissolve the parliament. The parliament, in a vote of no confidence, can overthrow the government. But neither parliament, nor president, nor the government can do anything to Zajednica once they launch it. Only Zajednica can dissolve Zajednica with a 2/3 majority. Point 20 states that Zajednica will have its own flag and symbols. Point 21 states that the statute is drafted by management team by December 25th last year, which did not happen. And this management team is consisted of 2 representatives from the Serb majority North municipalities and 2 representatives from the Serb majority South municipalities, representative from the Ministry of Local Government Administration, and those of OSCE. So out of 6 members, 4 of them will be Serbian representatives. I think that what is happening nowadays in Kosovo is what we have seen already in Bosnia, but not only in Bosnia. Disintegration of former Yugoslavia and disintegration of Soviet Union have a lot of similarities. Disintegration of Soviet Union brought about big octopus. It's Russian Federation as the head with its tentacles. Belarus, Transnistria, Gagauzia, Crimea and Eastern Ukraine, Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and so on. While disintegration of former Yugoslavia has brought a small quadrupus with Republika Srpska in Bosnia, with Serbian political parties in Montenegro who oppose membership of Montenegro into NATO because they oppose existence of Montenegro as an independent state. Then Serbian parallel structures in Kosovo who want to turn into a zajednica. Then pro-Serbian regime in Macedonia, and the Serbian Orthodox Church all over the region. And what is the game in here? The game is that from politics we shall remove both history and ideals, so it remains that, a game. And in this game, Serbia wants to sell itself, its thesis to the Brussels in the way that Brussels will allow Serbia to get stronger in the Balkans by having her moving away from Russia. I must say that I agree with the goal of EU. Weaker Russia in the Balkans is better for the peace and security of us all in the Balkans and Europe in general. But the price for this, it is not us Albanians who should be paying, and also Croats, and also Bosniaks. But I think that it is EU who should pressure Serbia and not make others pay the price for Serbia distancing herself from Russia, which, by the way, is not really happening. 20 years ago, in Kosovo, we have been told that we have to wait for democratization of Serbia in order to get for independence for Kosovo. And now, 2 decades later, they are telling us that we have to wait for Europeanization of Serbia prior to sovereignty for Kosovo. I think they were wrong 20 years ago. They are wrong again nowadays. Besides the issue of association of Serb majority municipalities, another boiling issue is demarcation of the border with Montenegro, which makes Kosovo lose 9,000 hectares of its territory. We are opposing this corrupted deal which was made with Montenegro and finally signed on 26th of August in Vienna last year. I think that the idea behind this demarcation of the border is to show that Kosovo does not have really borders. Kosovo is a territory without borders, but if you do not have borders, you don't really have a territory either. Meanwhile, in these last 6 months, we've done a petition with 205,000 signatures against the agreement with Serbia and the one with Montenegro. A dozen of protests throughout Kosovo. There was tear gas in 8 sessions of the parliament, 3 huge demonstrations on 28th of November 2015, 9th of January and 17th of February 2016, these last 2 being the biggest demonstration in the after-war Kosovo. And finally, we also had the decision of Constitutional Court, which said that agreement of 25th of August, which established zajednica, with each of its 7 chapters, from legal framework to final and comprehensive dispositions, violated our constitution in altogether 23 articles. We didn't hope much for the decision of Constitutional Court, and it was better than we expected. I don't think that this shows that our Constitutional Court is the best. This rather shows that Zajednica was too bad even for this kind of court. Prime Minister Mustafa declared that the citizens who have signed the petition against Zajednica with Serbia and demarcation of the border with Montenegro did not know what did they sign. But after the decision of Constitutional Court, which was made public on 23rd of December last year, it came out that it is precisely Prime Minister Isa Mustafa who did not know what he signed with Vučić on 25th of August 2015 in the Brussels. We as a movement for self-determination, we have been stigmatized by different media and politicians and diplomats. And I think that they put different labels on us, so nobody listens to what we have to say. I think this is the function of the label. So you look at the label, you do not hear the person who got that label. You do not listen to that person. Whenever we oppose the plans of Serbia, for example, we have been accused that we are against Serbs. As our President Visari Meri said in his speech in the last demonstration, we're not against Serbs, Serbia is against us. In fact, all those who are accusing us unjustly that if we are against Serbia, we're against Serbs, they are actually saying that Serbs can exist only according to the hegemonic project of Serbian state. But I don't think this is neither true nor right. I think that it is possible to live together, work together with Serbs by seeing Serbs outside of Belgrade hegemony, which has to be combated. In this sense, we would like to see a different kind of dialogue, not dialogue with Serbia in Brussels, closed diplomatic dialogue, where two prime ministers meet, sign an agreement which they have to go back home and sell to their own people. But I think we need open, democratic, social dialogue for development, a dialogue for development, where people would get together and discuss how they can engage in new economic development of our country. The greatest failure of Prime Minister of Serbia, Vučić, who did call early elections for the spring in Serbia, is the failure with Zajednica in Kosovo. And I think that Serbia had no resistance from our government, but only from our united opposition. That's why we gave a lesson to Belgrade by being united and by being very active with protests inside the institutions of the system and in the squares of our capital and in different other towns of Kosovo. There has been quite some time that people are disappointed with the government. But what has happened recently in Kosovo is that the government is disappointed with the people as well. And this is the new development, government being disappointed with the people. They are disappointed because citizens of Kosovo signed a petition, the greatest petition in the largest petition in the after-war Kosovo, against agreement with Serbia. They are disappointed with our big protests, despite media that they control, money that they have, dangerous people that they employ against us. Nonetheless, we had massive demonstrations. And they are also disappointed with a recent public opinion poll, which says that 71% of the citizens of our republic are against Zajednica. And precisely because government is disappointed with the people, police of the government is threatening the people. At present, there are in prison 12 our activists and members of parliament. Among them is the head of our parliamentary group, Glauko Njuvca, is organizational secretary of our movement, Darran Milićaj, and our spokesperson, Frašo Krasniqi. And we have another 6 members of parliament in house arrest, and 2 members of parliament from another party of our united opposition. So, to us, members of parliament from the opposition and activists of our movement, they turned our homes into prison and they've turned prison into our home. In after-war Kosovo, billions of euros have been stolen via government corruption and neoliberal privatization. But those who have been most arrested and sentenced were activists of our movement. Activists and members of parliament from the opposition. In the last 6 months that we cooperate together, we were kept more than 5 years altogether in prison. So social misery, huge unemployment in Kosovo, divided town of Mitrovica are our reality there. But nonetheless, we see the present crossroads as a new chance for people of Kosovo. We do not see crossroads as a danger. We see it as a chance. I think that danger is the wrong path. But once you've pushed brakes in the wrong path and you see a crossroads, you should embrace it and continue further on. And I'm very much optimistic that despite the fact that nowadays in Pristina we do not have water supply at our homes, but we have water cannons of police vehicles in the streets, there is a bright future in front of us because people of Kosovo are rising again, and real change, democratic change, is not top-down, is bottom-up, what is precisely happening nowadays there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kurti. I would like to ask colleague Alaf to start with the discussion.
Mr. Kurti, I have some questions for you. Let's begin with the first one. In the year of 2000, you were arrested by the police of Milosevic's regime. You spent a couple of months in the Požarevac prison as a political prisoner. Did you expect that to be arrested a decade later by the police force of the independent state of Kosovo?
Thank you for this question. I was arrested during NATO bombardments, which was 27th of April 1999, and I was sentenced 15 years in prison with the indictment which has as a first count endangering territorial integrity and sovereignty of Yugoslavia. It is the same article of the Penal Code of Serbia with which they have indicted Wesley Clark, Jacques Chirac, Bill Clinton, Gerhard Schroeder, and all other leaders of NATO countries. And I was kept for 1 year in Požarevac, in Milosevic's hometown, in prison there in Zavela. I was in the same prison where many Albanian political prisoners were as well, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 70s, in the 60s. And it is interesting that out of these 2 years and 7 months that I was in prison, 1 year and 5 months I was during period of Milosevic, and 1 year and 2 months I was during period of Koštunica. So Koštunica was 3 months better after democratic changes in Serbia, so-called democratic changes. I was not expecting that I will be arrested by Kosovar police. I was arrested 14 times by UNIMIC police. From when I got out in December 2001 until 2008, I was arrested 14 times by UNIMIC police. But I was not expecting to be arrested by Kosovar police. But I think that Kosovo is still not a democratic country. And of course, if you're not a democratic country, I think it's good if you have political prisoners. I think it's wrong if you're not a democratic country and still you don't have political prisoners. And in Kosovo, there are, I think, that members of parliament from the opposition are political prisoners. And I think this is the main issue. Our police is obeying to the orders, but if they continue down this path, I believe not for a very long time.
Thank you. The second question is, you actually have two opponents, the regime in Pristina and the regime in Belgrade. Without the support of Belgrade or without the support of Serbian members of the Kosovo parliament, Hashim Thaçi would not be elected as the president of Kosovo. How do you commend the cooperation between both regimes in Pristina and Belgrade?
I think that there is no contradiction between Thaçi and Vučić, Thaçi and Dačić. I think this is a false contradiction. The members of parliament from the Serbian community are totally controlled by Belgrade. of course, Serbs should be represented. But in our parliament, it is not the Serbs who are represented, it is the Belgrade which is represented. And 10 members of the Serbian list, they stayed in the room when the voting for the Thotje took place, and they voted themselves. And I think that this is because there is a secret deal between Thotje and Vučić, and it is probably about continuation of Zajednica in spite of the actions of opposition and decision of Constitutional Court. So there must be some secret agreement, which I believe rather sooner than later will become public, because we will notice consequences, thanks to which Serbian list with its MPs stayed in the parliament, and they enabled Thotje to become a president. So in making Thotje president, Vučić is a stakeholder, and this makes our worry greater at present.
You oppose the establishment of the independent community of Serbian municipalities in Kosovo. This is the SZO. You actually say that if that were to happen, Vladimir Putin would become a president of the part of Kosovo. What is the role of Russia in Kosovo, and to what extent its presence in Kosovo?
From Albanians who live in Mitrovica, I have heard that Russian agents are seen in north of Kosovo, and I think that is very dangerous for Kosovo, not only for Kosovo, because in Kosovo we have NATO, we have KFOR, but nonetheless we do not have our own army. We are not a powerful state to control our territory, so some bad things are happening there. We know very well that Putin mentions at least once per month Kosovo, sometimes even every week, and comparing it with Crimea. So actually, when Putin says that Crimea is like Kosovo, our worry is that he means that Kosovo is like Crimea. That one day, because Kosovo does not have an army, he might be tempted to organize some attacks against our country. And we know very well that nowadays Milorad Dodik, the leader of the Serbs of Bosnia and Republika Srpska, he is closer ally to Vladimir Putin, Rogozin and Medvedev, than to Alexander Vučić and Dačić. So in a way, this satellite of Serbia is becoming rather satellite of Russia. That is why we are very much worried that future president of Zajednica in Kosovo would exchange personal phone numbers with Putin. And there is nothing to do about it. I think that now it is the time, because now it is the chance to stop this, and that's why we are very dedicated as United Opposition to prevent establishment of Association of Serb Majority Municipalities. Again, not because we're against Serbs, but because this is the idea and the plan of Serbia.
Now, as you mentioned, the Kosovo army, as you know, you haven't, and it cannot be set up with the full votes of the Serbian members of the Kosovo parliament. What can be done here?
Well, I think that Thotje must have some solution, because he convinced Serbian MPs to vote him for president. Maybe we should ask him, how did you do this? So we convinced them to get an army. But of course, I'm being ironic. I think that Serbian MPs will not vote for Kosovo army, and we either have to change the constitution in this respect, or we need great help from EU and NATO to pressure Serbia in order to allow for Kosovo to vote in the parliament its own army. We need to change our constitution to have an army. Perhaps we also need to change the rules, how we are going to enable ourselves to have an army.
Kosovo has regular courts, EULEX mission for rule of law. There is the Hague tribunal for war crimes. Despite all of that, there is a special court for war crimes which will have a seat in Pristina and in The Hague. Why? What is the purpose of this?
We had UNMIK, which was United Nations mission in Kosovo as international administration of Kosovo. After UNMIK, we got EULEX in 2008 after Declaration of Independence. We had this shift from UN to EU, from UNMIK to EULEX. Meanwhile, we also had Hague Tribunal for war crimes. And if none of these solve the problem, I cannot see how another special court is going to solve it. When time has come for EULEX to give some accountability for all the money of European taxpayers that they spent in Kosovo, and they used to spend close to 1 million euros per day with a huge mission. Now, instead of being held responsible for what they did and did not do, they are proposing now new special court. We need normal court. We need universal justice. We do not need special treatment. I think that special treatment is further abnormalizing the state of Kosovo. And in order to do this, I think that we need to empower local judges. We might need expertise and help from outside, but international judges cannot replace Kosovar ones. Serbia did aggression. in Kosovo, attempted genocide. 120,000 houses have been burned down or destroyed. But prior to that, 10,000 unarmed civilians were killed, thousands of women were raped, 860,000 Albanians were deported outside Kosovo, and more than 1 million were expelled from their homes. Pensionist fund of Kosovo has been stolen, like bank deposits of Kosovars by Milosevic's regime. All the cultural and artwork from Kosovo have been stolen, and they didn't pay a single euro to us for all these war damages. And now it's special court for Kosovo Liberation Army. I think this is totally unfair. I think that our politicians should be held accountable rather for peace crimes than for war crimes. Not for what they did to Serbia, but for what they did to us, people of Kosovo. If there have been some individual crimes against Serbs, and there have been some, especially after the war, local courts should deal with them individually, but not to have ethnically based courts, namely special court against Kosovo Liberation Army. What is my greatest worry is that a special court against Kosovo Liberation Army on one hand and Zajednica Srpskih Opština are two sides of the same story. In order to install Association of Serb Majority Municipalities in Kosovo, they need a different narrative about the war. And I think that this special court that they want to establish will try to balance the narrative of the war in Kosovo by saying that yes, Serbia did most of the crimes, but also you Albanians committed some horrible crimes. So you're all guilty. There's nobody innocent in this country. You Albanians declared independence, now give some kind of independence inside your independence to Serbs as well. And I think this is just leading toward the Bosniazation of Kosovo further.
You mentioned in your lecture about your problems with Montenegro. What's happening with your problems with Macedonia also? And the Kosovo politics regarding neighborly and regional cooperation. Is Kosovo an asset of neighborly and regional stability, or it's something else entirely?
Since it became independent, Macedonia always had pro-Belgrade regimes in power, pro-Belgrade governments, except for 3 years, 1998, 2001. And all these pro-Belgrade regimes treated Albanians in Macedonia just as Serbia was treating Kosovo. With a shift from Ljupče Georgievski to Nikola Gruevski, the government of Macedonia, the state of Macedonia, shifted from pro-Bulgarian orientation toward pro-Serb one. And I think this is the problem. Albanians in Macedonia are underrepresented. They are politically discriminated, economically exploited. And I think that Nikola Gruevski government is an authoritarian regime, and he would like to not have Albanians in Macedonia altogether. But since he cannot do that, he does everything else. And what will happen in Macedonia, I believe it's very linked with how Albanians will be treated and respected in this neighboring country. I must say that in the Western Balkans, you cannot have a war without Serbia, but likewise you cannot have peace without Albanians. And whenever you have a war in the Western Balkans, Serbia is always somewhere there. It's impossible to have a war in Western Balkans and Serbia not to be there. But if you need long-term, sustainable peace, stability, security, then I think that Albanians are needed for that too. You know, Serbia has very long experience with wars. We Albanians have with demonstrations.
You speak Serbian language very well. We can't say excellent, but very well. What you say to your countrymen, your citizens, Serbian citizens, from this point?
Well, I learned Serbian in school, and
Serbian
also
language.
yes. Ah, sorry. Yes.
Serbian. Yes.
Ja sam naučio srpsko-hrvatski jezik u osnovnoj školi, a potom sam i čitao literaturu u zatvoru. Jer nije bilo druge mogućnosti. Ali mislim da je dobro što znam srpski jezik, srpsko-hrvatski jezik, bosanski jezik. I ja bih voleo da Srbi na Kosovu budu integrisani u kosovsko društvo. I ja mislim da prava integracija je socijalna, društvena integracija. Institucionalna integracija je neophodna, ali nije dovoljna. Jer ako sprovodiš samo institucionalnu integraciju, onda integrišeš srpsku elitu ili proizvodiš novu srpsku elitu, ali ne integrišeš proste ljude, građane na Kosovu koji su srpske pripadnosti. Zato ja mislim da treba novi dijalog, ne dijalog za pomirenje, jer Srbi sa Gračanice nisu mi uradili ništa. Ja sam se žrtvovao za svoje političke ideale, ali također sam bio mučen od strane srpske policije i sistema zbog toga što sam se protivio Srbiji, ali prvenstveno zbog toga što sam bio Albanac. I sad ja mislim da za to je kriv Beograd, a ne Gračanica, ne srpski građani koji žive na Kosovu. Zato ne treba nam sa Srbima sa Kosova dijalog za pomirenje, nego nam treba dijalog za razvoj, za ekonomski razvoj. Zemljoradnici, Albanci i Srbi bi trebalo da komuniciraju, da rade zajedno za razvoj i mislim da je to moguće. A pomirenje sa Srbijom će biti tek onda kada nas Srbija prizna i također kad prizna svoju zločinačku prošlost na Kosovu i suočava se sa tim.
Reci još nešto o Preševu.
We will later, kasnije. Now we will return back to Slovenia. Slovenia presence felt in Kosovo. How do you evaluate the relation between the two countries, between Slovenia and Kosovo?
Okay, if I say, first of all, if I say something about Preševa, Medveđa, and Bujanovce, I should not say it in Serbian, you know? I should rather say it in Albanian. Well, there are in general more Albanians in Serbia than Serbs in Kosovo, but there is no reciprocity. Whatever Serbia demands for Serbs in Kosovo is not ready to accept for Albanians in Serbia. In Preševa, Albanians are 90% of the population, but only half of the policemen are Albanian. In Bujanovce and in Medveđa is even worse. So I think that Albanians in Valley of Preševa, they continue to live as if nothing really changed there after the war and after the fall of Milosevic's regime. I think that for good neighborly relations with Serbia, reciprocity of rights is a crucial aspect of relations. While regarding the relations with Slovenia, I think that Slovenia is present in Kosovo with Nova Ljubljanska banka, with IPCO Mobitel, with one private pensionist fund, is not very much present with branches of economy which rely on production and manufacture. Of course, finance, trade, and services are important branches of the economy, but manufacturing and production are even more so. So I would like to see more cooperation with Slovenia in this respect. And we never forget the role of Slovenia by the end of 80s, when the miners' strike in Trepča was supported by Slovenian leadership at that time. And I must say that disintegration of Yugoslavia started in Kosovo. And our greatest ally at that time was precisely Slovenia. Now it looks like as if we have increased distance between each other. But I think that due to our past and due to our future common interest, there is much more space and needs for cooperation than we actually practice it.
How do you propose to fight crime and corruption in Kosovo?
International Protectorate in Kosovo has as priority short-term peace, stability, and security. And due to this approach, they always sacrifice justice. For them, having stable Kosovo is more important than having justice for people of Kosovo. And this has been of great concern for us. In 2006, High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy of EU, Javier Solana, launched the concept of crisis management. And the embodiment of this concept was EULEX as crisis management operation. A few years ago, some students from University of Constance, Germany, came to our headquarters to visit us, and I see their master program was written conflict management. And I asked them, what happened to the word resolution? Used to be such a nice word, conflict resolution. Why all of a sudden we call it conflict management? As if conflict is here merely to be managed, not to be solved altogether. But this logic of crisis management is preventing explosion of crisis, but nonetheless always keeping us at the brink of it. So one way to perpetuate the crisis is by managing it and by not wanting to solve it. And when you bring rule of law within the logic of short-term stability and crisis management, you don't get justice. You get disciplined politicians who are very corrupted, but at the same time, for tolerance that they get from international bureaucrats for their corruption, they pay back with political obedience and submissiveness. So there is a happy marriage of interests. Local politicians are corrupted, but outside of the jail. But meanwhile, situation is stable and everybody gets happy. So this is, I think, the vicious circle in Kosovo. And to fight organized crime and corruption, we need to do two things. I don't think that you can really have stable justice, if I may put it that way, if you do not have some economic development and hope for well-being among citizens. Only with law enforcement state agencies, only with prosecutors and courts, with no jobs, no hospitals, poor quality education, you cannot really bring justice. So I think we should see this as parts of the system that we want to achieve. On the other hand, fighting corruption means fighting big sharks of corruption, not small fishes, as EULEX and UNMIK were doing. Soren Jessen-Petersen, a retired diplomat now, recently came to Kosovo, and in one TV interview, he said he used to be head of UNMIK. He said, whenever we try to arrest some politician of high-level corruption, organized crime, or war crimes, you cannot imagine who was calling us one night in advance to prevent the arrest in the name of stability. But, and you know, you in this very interesting declaration of former king of Kosovo, because he was like a monarch. You know, there's no king in the world or queen in the world which had so much power as SRSG, head of UNMIK in Kosovo. And you would think, who was calling them one night in advance? Was it like George Bush, Pope, Elvis? You know, who was calling them? You know, who is this, like, this monster that was called. But he didn't say so. But this explains that always the quest for stability, the fear how it might get worse, the fear what we can lose, and not the will to have a better situation, to see what we can gain, was regularly prevailing. You know, no wonder Elliot Ness was not a Frenchman, was American. Elliot Ness fighting Al Capone. So also we to fight our small Al Capones, we need our local Elliot Nesses, like our own prosecutors. And EU can help us, but cannot replace our prosecutors and our judges.
Now, looking to the future, what we can expect from you and from the self-determination movement, and as we know, your party college, Bent Ahmed, is now the mayor of Pristina. When will you, as a movement, take over the governing of Kosovo?
Local elections in Kosovo are in 2017. Parliamentary elections are in 2018. But with our insistence as United Opposition, I am very optimistic that early elections will take place this year, and we shall win them.
Now, the last question, where do you see Kosovo in the 10 or the 20 years? Now you talk about next 5 years, but now.
Yeah, well,
Next
about
20.
10 years, I'm not sure, but in 20 years, I think Kosovo will be part of EU. Together with Albania or on its own, I would rather prefer the first scenario. And but meanwhile, I hope that EU will change as well. We need to change a lot to become part of EU, but I hope that once we will be able to join EU is not the same that we see today. Is more social Europe with more justice and with less fear of these nation states, and not only with joint cold institutions, but with a common warm society.
Now, your questions, you can also in Slovenian language, and he will try to understand and to answer you. Kdo ima kakšno vprašanje?
Jaz sem državnik Vladimir Bejšek. Z Kosovari smo imeli vedno dobre odnose. Ko je bil štrajk v Trepči, smo Janša Zlovec, Peter Božič in jaz organizirali v Ljubljani v Cankarjevem domu znamenito zborovanje za vaše rudarje. Naj povem, da sem kot književnik sodeloval v Prištini, v Peči, in moj dober prijatelj je bil, torej vsi pesniki so bili dobri prijatelji, ampak med temi je pa bil tudi literarni kritik Ibrahim Rugovac, ki je vaš politik. Dvakrat smo rešili življenje, zdaj ne bom povedal kako, ker so imeli tajni načrt, da ga likvidirajo. Značilno je, da to sovraštvo, etnično sovraštvo, izvira iz nekih, bi rekel, iracionalnih pogojev. Veste, to sovraštvo ni to, kar ste rekli, med ljudmi navadno, ampak se je usidralo po nekih iracionalnih, magičnih, bi rekel, principih tudi v politiki. Zanimivo, ko smo sodelovali, kako bi zanimivo Srbe vključili v nekem kulturnem odnosu do Kosovarjev, sem naletel na velike težave. Naj povem, zanimivo v Beogradu na mednarodnih srečanjih pisateljev, tudi so bili Nobelovci, sem doživel, da sem moral, zanimivo, Vuka Draškoviča, sem moral nagnati z govornice, ker je govoril take sovražne četniške bedarije, da sem ga moral nagnati. Zanimivo. In ti poskusi so potem vendarle nekako uspeli. Povedal bom pa eno anekdoto. Vaš Ehad Musa je znamenit kitarist iz Pariza. In nekoč se je zgodilo, ko sem šel kot književnik v Peč, sem na brniškem letališču, za vse Albance je bil bočni vetar. Noben in so bili cele družine Albancev, so tam Kosovarjev, so ležali. In tam je bila neka gospa, Parižanka, in seveda, ker se je pisala Musa, so uredili tudi, da ne bi mogla iti v Prištino, potem pa, oziroma v Beograd, pa potem v Prištino. In kaj se je zgodilo? Ko je ona meni, jaz govorim francosko kot slovensko, in mi je povedala, da ima težavo. In jaz sem se zmenil, ker je bilo to maja, sem se kar napravil malce tako politično ostrega in sem zahteval miličnika, ki je vodil tole letališče. In pride ta miličnik, šef, in sem rekel, ja, veste, ta gospa bi rada potovala v Beograd, ne? Jaz sem lahko, ona pa ne bi mogla. Kaj boste napravili? Bom javil na parlament oziroma za izvršni svet skupščine SR Slovenije, če ne boste pustili. Ja, je rekel, lahko, se zmenimo, ampak vi morate podpisati, da je ona vaša žena in otrok, deklica, hči, da je vaša hči. Sem jo vprašal, a ste za to, da podpišete, je bila takoj, ne? In tako sem bil nesojeni mož tele gospe Musa in sem bil včeraj. Šli smo potem v posebno destinacijo za mednarodne polete in za Boeing. Gospa mi je kupila liter viskija in eno čokolado iz hvaležnosti. In v Beogradu nas je že čakal z Mercedesom tehat Musa. No in potem nas je peljal v peč, ker je iz peči doma. Skratka, to so bile take nekatere stvari, da vam rečem, sovraštvo je iracionalno. Tole, ne. Se pa zauzemam, jaz sem prebral na internetu sem prebral vaše vse dogodke politične in vas občudujem, ker ste se znebili tega sovraštva. Veste, da govorite v optimizmu za demokracijo Kosovarjev, ne pa za tole medsebojne, bi rekel, grde odnose. Skratka, pozdravljam, da ste prišli med nas. Upam, da se boste v Sloveniji dobro počutili in da ste našli ravno v ifimesu, ki napreduje dobre prijatelje.
Naslednje vprašanje.
Okay, Alvin, I'm glad you came here. I was in Kosovo many times recently. Got some relatives in Serbia, so I drive down there and thought you will fix this remaining part of the motorway from Pristina to Niš as soon as possible. And I'm glad that toward the end you mentioned the economy, and I'm well aware that that's the main problem of your country. Although you being the opposition can concentrate on other subjects which would help you to replace the government. I'm sorry that you had spent so much time in the jail, especially as a young man. But you had a great mentor, Adam Demaci. He's fondly remembered with us olders. I would just like to ask you just one question. Let's make it two. First, do you consider throwing tear gas in Kosovo Parliament as the non-violent democratic means of opposition? And second, what are the current relations of your party with Albania? I mean, we know that there are some changes there. Rama seems to be the reasonable man. So I was in Drač also several times, and I noticed that your countrymen are very present there. The hotel where I stayed, Haradin I photo at the reception desk. So, and once again, thanks for coming. And thanks for ifimes for inviting me.
Thank you. Well, first we tried with whistleblowing with rotten eggs. We tried other means in the parliament. They didn't work. And finally, we were throwing tear gas. We're letting off tear gas in the parliament. Today also, they let off tear gas canisters in the parliament. And I must say that Today is the only day, the only occasion when I have alibi for not being there to let off tear gas. It is not that we like to let off tear gas there. We, of course, we do it out of this necessity to bring protest inside the parliament and not allow normalization of association of Serb majority municipalities, which again, I think will not be beneficial, not even for Serbs, let alone for state of Kosovo. It is not a democratic mean because we do it unilaterally. We do not like organize any kind of voting. We do not. It does not express any kind of general will of the MPs, but we never mean to harm them with tear gas. So those who most inhale tear gas is ourselves. So the person who inhaled most of the tear gas thrown inside the parliament and probably outside as well is myself. So we don't want to harm them. We just want to tell to the government, which did a rebellion against our republic, that it's not welcome in the parliament of our republic. So I believe in a parliamentarian republic, as our country is, as our state is. But Mustafa and Thalci are turning our state into governmental republic, where you have too much government and too little of republic. That's why we are using tear gas. And you know, tear gas canisters that we get is the one that we take from the police. Because you cannot buy tear gas canisters. It's not allowed to buy tear. The only institution that can buy tear gas canisters is the police. The police throws hundreds of tear gas canisters on us during the protest, and a dozen of them do not blast, and we take them in our pockets and bring them inside the parliament. And you know what? Whenever they were throwing tear gas on poor and middle class people of Kosovo protesting outside the parliament, tear gas never was problematized as something which is dangerous for life or for health. Now, all of a sudden, when we let off tear gas, where some very rich people of Kosovo are, millionaires, all of a sudden they say that tear gas is toxic poison, is chemical weapon. They start to use these extreme expressions which do not belong to reality. You know, tear gas goes away now with those huge ventilators they've put there. It goes away in 5 minutes. But this Zajednica will not go away in 50 years if we allow it to be installed. So yes, we might violate some small law, but I think it's of utter necessity to do so. Relations with Albania, I think relations between Kosovo and Albania are very good, but I think they are better among the people than our elites, because our elites are a bit like, they like more power in their own country than communication and cooperation. There has been some regular meetings between two governments, but only twice per year, and recently only once per year. And these agreements, bilateral agreements, did not amount to creation of joint mechanisms, which I believe is important. We have good contacts with the Prime Minister of Albania, who is also the president of the Socialist Party, and I think vice president of Socialist International. And I think that relations between Kosovo and Albania in the future will get even closer, because even though we are in two states, people feel, people know, people affirm that we are one nation.
Thank you very much. Do you have, please?
I have a personal question. I've lived in Belgrade from 2008 to 2012, and Oliver Ivanovic was quite an interesting interlocutor. What is your personal feeling about him?
Well, according to people in Mitrovica, he was the leader of a paramilitary group called Bridge Watchers. in Mitrovica, and he had his own karate club. And even Bernard Kouchner, the second SRSG, head of UNMIK, confirms this in his book, Warriors of Peace. And he has been sentenced now 9 years in prison by being blamed and declared guilty for his role in murder of, I think, 49 Albanians. And you know, sometimes the appearance can create some false impressions, I must say. So some of the people who did the most horrible things could seem normal and pleasant. I think that even Holbrook confirmed this with Milosevic by saying that he's a very funny man. But we know that he launched 4 wars in former Yugoslavia, which ended up with some of the most horrible crimes in the after-war Europe. So I think that Oliver Ivanovic belongs to the same legacy and to the same mindset.
Do you have any question? Kakšno vprašanje še? Kolega Zijat.
I hope you enjoyed this lecture and discussion as much as I did. I would like to thank Mr. Alvin Kurti for his interesting lecture, which will help us understanding better the situations in Kosovo and the region in general. And would like to invite you our next lecture next month. Thank you.